So guys, tune into the show. Don't miss it because it's going to be an amazing show. You are going to be touched. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be excited. It's Thursday, 11 o'clock on a Thursday. The Message Talk Show with Alex Gordon. Yes, don't miss it. So guys, tune into the show. Don't miss it because it's going to be an amazing show. You are going to be touched. You're going to be amazed. You're going to be excited. It's Thursday, 11 o'clock on a Thursday. The Message Talk Show with Alex Gordon. Yes, don't miss it.
And so it is. It's Thursday again, folks. Thursday, that wonderful day. You know what happens on a Thursday? We have an awful guest on the show, and she is smiling already. Yes, she is smiling. She is excited about the show. So, guys, tune into the show. Come on, guys. Call your friends. Call your friends. Call your worst enemies. Call your mates. Get on the phone and give them a call and tell them that the Message Talk Show is live. Now, get yourself a bottle of water, all right? Get yourself something to drink because I know what it's like where you are. So you may be calling in from America, from Australia, from the Caribbean, and from the UK. Wherever you're calling from, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending on where you're calling from. This is the Message Talk Show with host Alex Gordon. Today we're talking about a very powerful topic, and I wouldn't have even thought about this had I not met this lady. Yes, had I not met this lady. Her name is Carol Stewart. Carol, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Alex. Looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Looking forward to having this conversation. Yes, well, I would have never had this conversation at all.
This conversation with you.
Misconceptions of introversion. Guys, you know, we do have a lot of misconceptions about introversion. Some of us say we're shy, some of us say we're introverts, and we can't quite tell the difference between the two. But I tell you, it also means that sometimes we put on a show. Hey, we're going to find out from the leadership expert today, Carol Stewart, coming in all the way from London to be with us. That's amazing. You don't have to travel these days, Carol. The jet-setting time has disappeared. You don't have to jump on a plane. Sorry?
You can travel the world in a day.
Hey, you can travel the world in a day, have several conferences, several meetings, and have not left your living room. That's good. But don't you think that's even better for us, though, as human beings?
It is, because it means that we can have far wider reach.
And that far wider reach, it means that the impact on our bodies, we are no longer as tired. We're no longer traveling for long hours away from our families. I think it's a better lifestyle now that's going to come out of everything we've gone through for the past 12 months. So how have you been coping?
It is and it isn't, because, you do get that, what they call Zoom fatigue, when you're on video calls all the time.
Right, okay. Zoom fatigue. So what you're saying is that you'd like to be in front of real people at some point in your life.
I'd like a mixture.
You'd like a mixture. Okay, you'd like a mixture. So how have you been coping for the past 12 months?
Yeah, I've been fine. Because I'm introverted, I haven't, and also because a lot of my work was done online anyway. More and more people increasingly wanting their coaching done virtually anyway. So it wasn't a big thing for me to start doing everything online.
Wow. And because you are so far removed from everyone, how does that make you feel as a person?
I mean, I do miss that social interaction with family, with friends, and even business wise as well. But at the same time, it hasn't, but I know extroverted friends, clients, I know it has been quite a challenge for them, particularly at the beginning of lockdown. But for me, yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. You allow you to slip into your own self. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, guys, so I don't know where you're joining us from. This is the Message Talk Show today, talking about the misconceptions of introversion. And now we jump into asking Carol, who is she? Who do you serve, Carol? And what got you here? Let's tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so who am I? I'm Carol Stewart. I am a wife, a mother, sister, aunt, daughter, many things. And I am an executive career leadership coach, speaker and trainer, author. I'm the founder of the Bounding Solutions and author of Quietly Visible, Leading with Influence and Impact as an Introverted Woman. And I specialize in coaching introverted women who are senior leaders, and coaching them to be visible, to exude presence, to influence and make an impact. And what got me to doing this was, prior to starting my coaching business, I was a leader, and I'm introverted myself. And there were a lot of misconceptions about introversion. And as an introverted leader, I often felt that, I had to try and be something that I wasn't. And I hadn't accepted introversion because back then I didn't really fully understand what it was. And then it was once I left the organization that I worked in and I did a master's in coaching psychology. Coaching had always been an add-on to what I did as a leader. I'd started off in the organization in a very junior role, worked my way up to a senior position. And then in 2011, I decided to take voluntary redundancy to start my coaching business. Coaching had always been an add-on to what I did as a leader. And I decided that I wanted a formal coaching qualification and also get a better understanding of the psychology that underpins coaching. So I took redundancy, did a master's in coaching psychology and started my business. And I initially started working with women who were going through midlife career change because that was my story. And I was getting a lot of women of that age coming to me. Then I started getting younger women. I started getting women who were business, women who were in corporate. And then a few years into my coaching business, I started reflecting on the type of clients that I'd worked with. And I noticed that a lot of them were introverted. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I'm introverted myself. And then I started writing articles about the challenges that introverted women and introverted leaders face. And I started getting inundated with messages, emails, comments on my articles, people sharing their challenges with me, the obstacles that they've had, their experiences. And I decided to make that my area of specialism and also to write my book as well, because there are a lot of misconceptions about introversion. And in the corporate environment, it's often the case that he or she who shouts the loudest is the one that gets heard, the one that gets seen, and the one that gets ahead.
Well, I'm telling you, that's not the only place who shouts the loudest gets heard. I think
No,
even some
it's not.
families as well.
Families, in society, particularly here in the UK, the US, and many parts of the West. But certain countries like Nordic countries and Japan and China, they value introversion as a leadership quality.
Okay, so let me ask you that $1 million question. What's the definition of introversion?
So introversion and extroversion, they are attitude types, the types of being, the way that we interact and engage with the world. And if you think of them, introversion and extroversion along a continuum, and we all have a preference as to where we fit along there, depending on the situation and the environment that they're in. Some of us have a preference towards introversion, some of us have a preference towards extroversion. And it's all to do with the way that we are stimulated, the way that we are energized. Introverts typically are overly stimulated by being in noisy social environments. It's not that we don't like them or enjoy them. It's that they can it can be draining being too long in those sorts of environments. We need time to recharge and re-energize. Whereas extroverts typically thrive in those sorts of environments where there's people and they're socializing and they're engaging with different people. They find that energizing being in those sorts of environments. And we have, we can, some people can appear more extroverted when they're introverts, or appear as what people call introverted when they're extroverts. But we have a preference as to where we are the majority of the time as well.
Wow.
Depending, like I said, on the environment that they're in. Some people, so say for me, I'm in certain environments, I can be very outgoing, very sociable, whereas in certain environments, I might find myself a bit more withdrawn. And it also depends on, what else is going on for us as well.
Wow. Because I never really understood it, because I always thought an extrovert was someone who was loud all the time, but I didn't realize, and as not until I've been looking at the definition after having a kind of discussion with you, and it's about the energy levels. It's about the energy levels, and as you said, walking into an environment where you are energized by the noise, you're energized by the people, you're energized by everything else. And I just thought people were just loud. I
Yeah,
didn't realize that. It's just amazing how we have these inner preferences in our being.
that's right. Yes, and people, like you said, just as there are misconceptions around introversion, there are misconceptions around extroversion, because a misconception is that all extroverts are loud, but they're not.
No, don't tell me that. You're saying extroverts are not loud.
Not all extroverts are loud.
But I thought it was the loudness that made them the extrovert. That's how you identified them.
No, it's like I said, it's about how we are stimulated and energized. So people who are extroverted, they will thrive in social environments where there is, lots of going on, lots of activity, but they don't necessarily have to be loud.
Okay. Wow.
And people think that all extroverts are confident because they are typically seen as being this loud and gregarious, so people automatically think that they're confident. But not all extroverts are confident, just like not all introverts lack confidence. And introversion doesn't mean that you're shy either, which is often a misconception about introversion. But
yeah, I was going to come there. I was going to come there next. But let me just go back. Let me just go back to what you just said earlier about being an extrovert, about confidence, because very much we link confidence to what we see in front of us. So if someone's an extrovert and exuding all those qualities of an extrovert, on the stage, being energized by what's in the room, you're saying that person's not necessarily a confident person.
Yeah, it can be.
Wow. That amazes me. So they could be doing all of that, and there's inner turmoil through everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
So how do they manage then to pull it off? Because
sometimes extroverted people, when they're not feeling confident, they may talk more.
You hear more words because they're not confident.
Yeah.
They're not listening.
Because then they're nervous and they're lacking that confidence may cause some extra. I'm not saying all, but to speak more.
Wow. So how can an introverted person be confident then? Because, okay, I know your book is called.
What is confidence? What is confidence?
Okay, go on then. What is confidence? What is confidence? Come on, tell us what confidence is.
What is confidence to you?
Well, confidence is a belief. It's a belief. It's a way you feel about yourself. It's a belief in what you do. A belief about yourself. It's an inner sense of who you are.
Yeah.
As a person, that makes you confident.
Yeah, and that's what I would say. For me, confidence is about being comfortable with who I am and having the courage to do all that I need to do.
Yes. But because you're an extrovert, if you're an extrovert, it appears as though you are comfortable in your skin. It appears as though you are comfortable with talking and with taking the stage. All these things appear, they're tick boxes.
And you think, wow, this person is really confident. And so you got some people looking in the crowd and thinking, I wish I could be confident like this person based on the performance they see in front of them.
Yeah. And that just shows that, the misconceptions that we have, because somebody stands up on the stage, is, gregarious and, high-fiving and all that happy clappy stuff, doesn't mean to say that they're confident.
Wow. So how can an introverted person be confident then? Because you're quietly confident, quietly visible, as you said in your book.
Mm-hmm.
What's the signs of an introverted person being confident then?
Just being comfortable in their skin and being their selves, authentic self, but not being afraid to do what they need to do.
Because I would say, because you're an introvert, you could appear confident in your skin because you're not as exuberant, you are quiet, you appear to be listening more.
Can I just stop you there? Does exuberant mean confidence?
Wow. No, we established that you did say this exuberance mean confidence. You did say wow. No. Exuberance doesn't mean confident. Yeah, we established that earlier. We did. It doesn't mean that you're confident. Yes.
And that is where those misconceptions arise, and that is why I've kind of made it one of my missions is to change the narrative around introversion. Because when I initially started sort of making introversion my specialism, and I was out networking once, and this woman said to me, and I told the woman that I was introverted, and she said to me, you don't look like an introvert. And I thought, well, what's an introvert supposed to look like? Wow. And so I put a call out on social media and I asked the question, when you think of the word introvert, what comes to mind? And I got responses such as shy, lacking confidence, that doesn't like public speaking, social recluse, socially doesn't like social interactions, shy, as I said, all sorts of negative connotations, aloof. But those things could be said of someone who's extroverted as well.
Wow. So what does it mean to be shy then?
To shy means that you're nervous and timid when you're around people. And you're fearful of being in situations where you have to be around people. But introversion doesn't necessarily mean that people that are nervous about being around people or timid about being around people.
So you're nervous and timid about being around people. So that's just shy. So you're not confident being around people, but that doesn't make you an introvert.
No.
Wow. But imagining someone in an environment, they're working and they're trying to get on with their careers, and they have this war going on in their heads about having to be this introvert or having to be this extrovert. How do you deal with that?
So, because, like I said, the corporate environment is very much geared towards extroversion. A lot of work practices are more geared towards. So introverts typically like to think and reflect before speaking. Extroverts, they will often speak and process their thoughts as they're speaking. And I
was going to say they speak without thinking. I thought that's what he was going to say then, but you pulled yourself there. They process it while they're speaking. Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of work practices are geared towards that. So if you think of meetings where there's a lot of speaking on the spot, you think of interviews where someone will ask you a question and you're expected to respond like that. Brainstorming where people are just put on the spot and say, oh, come up with an idea or a suggestion. They don't necessarily play to the introverted preference of thinking and reflecting. And so someone who's introverted in the workplace, who is in those sorts of environments, will need to be able to be themselves, because often people who are in those sorts of environments may struggle and not necessarily understand that it's because of their preference towards introversion, not because there's something wrong with them. So then they may view themselves negatively, which can then affect their confidence and their self-belief. So it's one, understanding themselves and understanding what their preferences are and their strengths are and playing to their strengths. Introversion isn't a weakness or something that you have to get over. Introversion is a strength. And so play to their strengths But also recognize in certain situations, you may need to adapt your style. And that is the same for extroverts as well. You certain situations, you may need to adapt your style or modify your behavior in order to get the best outcome. But I've never heard someone say, oh, an extroverted person needs to act more introverted. But I have often heard people say an introverted person needs to act more extroverted.
That's because of their expectations, isn't it? That's the expectations of them appearing. They're linking extroversion and confidence as the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so because of that, they're looking for a certain level of performance.
That's right.
You're on stage all the time then, in a sense.
And in some ways it is like a stage. And I was on the BBC Radio 4's listening project last month with this guy who is a Scottish playwright. His name slipped out of my head, sorry, but he's extroverted, and they paired us up to have a conversation. And we had this, we were talking about lockdown and both of our experiences of lockdown. Him as an extrovert, me as an introvert, and he talked about how he's a performer, so he gets his audience on the stage as a playwright. But he said that you can see like how it can play out in the workplace for extroverted people who don't necessarily have a stage like what he does. So it's like they're performing on stage when they're in the workplace. So they are extroverted. They're sort of that, what typically is associated with extroversion. So and I thought that was quite a good way of describing it, the way that he described it.
Wow, that's amazing. So how did you? Because then you are forced into a situation with an extrovert and you're an introvert. So how did you kind of balance everything that was going on in that session? Because then you are kind of playing to a certain level of expectation in that particular situation. How did you balance it?
So for me, it was making sure that I spoke up as well, and not letting him have all the conversation, which I could quite easily have done. I could have just sort of sat back and listened.
Just sat back and listened.
Yeah. And introverts are typically known as being good listeners.
Yes. One of the things I was going to say earlier was about how do you help an introverted person, or how do you deal with it in a busy situation? And because you said that extroverts kind of speak and think at the same time, and so we have situations all the time whereby we put people on the spot. We'll ask, we'll put them on the spot and expect them to just suddenly perform or suddenly say something. So if you're an introvert and you don't respond that way, the best thing you can do is somehow press the pause button, pause the conversation, or take control of the conversation by pausing it and allowing yourself to deflect before you come back with an answer.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. So why women? Why women? Because you've taught a lot about women and how your career developed and the type of people that were coming to you. Why women?
I mean, I do work with men as well. I do coach men as well. It's just that my focus is women because of I work with leaders and because of the gender inequality that still exists today when it comes to senior leaders.
The gender inequality that still exists today when it comes to senior leaders. So what you're saying is that women aren't necessarily put in top positions because of their capabilities, but men are in the senior post, whether they're good or not.
I'm not saying that whether they're good or not, but I'm saying that is despite how many hundreds of years, since women have sort of been in the workplace, there is still inequalities at senior levels. It's not just gender, it's race and other protected characteristics as well. And that is why my focus is at women, because I see less women at a senior level.
Wow.
And so to sort of help that pipeline get into those senior levels.
So let me just jump in there. We're getting some feedback here from the public. Loving this. This is Tony Ashley. Loving this. I'm an introvert, but people think I'm not. I get my energy from being away from the social noise around me. It's taken me a long time to realize that this is okay. Spent many years thinking that something wrong with
I love that. I
me.
love that. Thank you for sharing that, Tony. And that is it.
Oh,
It's often people will think because there is something wrong with them. And you know, you often times I work with women who are like in their 30s, 40s, 50s, who as a child they'd been made to feel that something was wrong with them because of their introversion. And so they have grown up. That then leads to that self-doubt and a lack of self-belief as you get older, because you think that you're not as good as other people because of your introversion. And I still see it happening with children today. Last year, was it last year or the year before, I was speaking to a woman who had two children, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And her 7-year-old was extroverted and her 5-year-old was introverted. And when I was talking to her about it, she said that she hadn't realized, but what she was doing was that she was making her 5-year-old, when they were at family gatherings or events,
speak up.
kind of pushing their child to go and join in with the other children, where the child was quite happy just to stay by her. And she said that one time she walked past the school and she noticed a child sat on their own in the playground. So she stormed into the school. Why is my daughter sat on her own in the playground? Why isn't she playing with other children? But the teacher said to her that she's okay. She's happy. She does play with the other children, but she's also happy playing on her own. And she recognized that if she carried on doing that, that's going to send out a message to her daughter that she's not good enough. And then that is going to affect her as she grows older.
Right.
Another woman told me about her daughter, I think she was 12 or 13, who got marked down a grade at school. She was great at what she did. It wasn't her academic knowledge. It was the fact that she didn't put her hand up in school, in the classroom enough. And the girl was really upset about it, understandably. And so imagine if she's constantly told, because you don't put your hand up enough, you're not good enough. What sort of message is that going to send out to her?
Wow. But you'd have expected a teacher to be a bit more understanding than that, you know.
But even teachers not all teachers necessarily understand it. Last year I did a talk in a school about this matter. And initially it was really interesting, because initially you could see the extroverted children. They were the ones that were very sort of outgoing and answering the questions, and the quieter ones were sort of, you could see who were the introverts and who were the extroverts. But as I was talking and letting them knowing that it was okay, I could see it was like a release for these introverted children. Wow. And they started to engage more. And then the head of year, she said to them that she was introverted. And they were like, wow, no, miss, you're introverted. And she said, yes, she is. And she even thanked me as well, because she said it's helped her to understand herself better as well. She said oftentimes she will go home at the end of the day and she just drained. Her energy has just drained from it all.
Wow. That's amazing, where a teacher discovers that about herself in a situation like that. And so this is still something that we've not kind of grappled with, even though we are so many years ahead in so many different things. We're not understanding the true nature of the people we have around us.
Yeah, and the reason why I think it is that, you know, I talked about certain cultures where it's considered a leadership quality. And I think it's because we've become so individualistic, as our culture is so individualistic, where there's that need for that self-affirmation, where people are always wanting to sort of be in the spotlight rather than the collective, you know, having that collective culture where people are looking out for each other and it's everybody is in together. And I think that probably has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, we're always performing, isn't it? But
yeah,
we've been kind of coached that way, to perform, to be made, to be seen to perform and be visible by raising your hand or by doing something that you stand out all the time. You're always responding to this kind of performance levels.
Yeah.
So how do you pull yourself back from that?
Yeah. So if I could just say, Susan Cain, she wrote a book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And in it, she talks about the extrovert ideal, that we live in what is called the extrovert ideal. And this is an omnipresent belief that the ideal self is alpha, gregarious, and comfortable being in the spotlight. And I think that historically, that is what has been associated with being a good leader.
Wow.
even though it may not, it's not necessarily the case, but that is what we've come to believe makes a good leader and people strive for. But not everybody is like that.
So
And sorry,
when
I cut in. I was I was acting like an extrovert then.
So when people
I'm joking.
when people strive for that kind of people are striving because that's the social norm. We are we're destroying people at the same time. We're
Yeah.
destroying how they feel about themselves because they're having to do something that's not natural. So
Yeah.
which one do you think hurts the most? Being shy, being an introvert? Which one has more pain attached to it if you're in the wrong situation?
Oh, I mean, I'd say being shy. I mean, they both can. If someone who is introverted doesn't understand introversion, doesn't understand themselves, doesn't understand how they can be themselves in extroverted environments and still thrive and still get ahead, then I'd say that they can both be painful. But if
Wow.
somebody who is introverted has that, is able to be there, has the confidence to be their authentic self, and they accept that introversion is not a weakness, it's not something that they have to get over with, and they are accepting of introversion, naturally they're more confident. When we're our authentic selves, we're naturally more confident. So if somebody is at that place, then I would say being shy would be more painful.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know where you're listening from today. We're talking to Carol Stewart here, leadership expert, about the misconceptions of introversion. And she has just explained to us how, as a society, we have been grooming people to be extroverts because we think being out there, being outspoken, being loud, being visible all the time is the way to be. While at the same time, someone can just be a great leader and an introvert at the same time. Guys, you need to tune into the show. Press the share button. Press the share button. Get your friends on this now. Because do you know, you could have had a child who's a natural introvert, but because of their introversion, you've been trying to push them to speak up, push them to participate in family gatherings. You've been putting your kids through hell because of your misconceptions of introversion. Woo, man.
Yeah, and a lot of the clients that I coach, it's STEM. They have lack of self-belief, or they doubt themselves, and it stems from their childhood experiences.
Wow. So we have Mr. Tony Ashley participating in the show again, and he's come back and said, good question. Our own emotional intelligence and self-awareness is important. They both can hurt if not understood and managed.
Yeah, and I would agree. Self-awareness is key. And I would say self-awareness, as the leaders, self-awareness is critical. It's a key leadership qualities, having that self-awareness, because with that self-awareness, whether you're introverted or extroverted, you will know yourself and how you respond in certain situations. You'll be aware of how other people respond to you and why they respond the way that they do to you. And you'll be able to identify what you need to do to be able to modify your behavior so that you can get the best outcome.
But even getting to raising that self-awareness within yourself, it takes a while to get there. It doesn't happen overnight. Because
it doesn't. No. Some people are more self-aware than others. And self-awareness comes through self-reflection, reflecting on why you responded the way that you did in certain situations, why something maybe caused you to feel offended, or why you thrived in certain situations, and also getting feedback from others as well.
Yes, but I can imagine an extrovert not wanting some feedback, not wanting some feedback, and just get carried away with the sound of their own voice all the time. Whereas an introvert will probably accept feedback more willingly. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. A lot of people don't like feedback.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Irrespective of.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like feedback because sometimes, some people are uncomfortable getting feedback because you don't know what people are going to say about you, do you? And everybody has this need. Well, most people think that they need to be approved by others. And so if you get a feedback that is not, then you may feel hurt, rejected. So a lot of people don't like feedback. And the same reason a lot of people don't like giving feedback.
Yeah, wow. Whew, we got some issues. We have some challenges in life. We really have some challenges.
We do. When you sort of think of like us as humans and the issues, and a lot of it is just to do with the way that we, down to those beliefs, down to some people wanting the power over others, down to, a lack of that self-belief and self-worth can affect us in so many different ways.
Does being an introvert affect women more than men? Or let's rephrase that. Are there more introverted women than men?
I wouldn't say so. I
No?
mean, I don't know whether there is any data that says that, but I wouldn't say so. My focus is on introverted women, but I do get a lot of men as well who contact me, who share their challenges with me as well. So I would say no. I wouldn't say that there is,
and so
more than others. Maybe, and this, it doesn't just sit with introversion, but with a lot of things around confidence. I think men are less likely to talk about it, whereas women are more open to. And an example of, I'm trying to think, a male who's introverted. I mean, they say that Barack Obama is introverted.
You'd never imagine that, would you? You'd never imagine his stage performance and think he's an introverted guy. Because he's comfortable with himself. He appears comfortable with himself, and he warms to speaking on stage. And even without a script, he can just roll it out and be that icon on stage. And you're saying that he's an introvert.
That's what the reports say. Whether, I don't know whether it.
Okay, have a conversation with him.
Yeah, I'll ring him tonight.
He might. He might make contact with you.
But Mark Zuckerberg, he's introverted. Bill Gates is introverted.
Yeah, well, I would have got the impression from time that Mark Zuckerberg was introverted because he does appear uncomfortable. I remember when the government officials were quizzing him one year about certain privacy issues with Facebook, and just the way that he responded made me feel he was so uncomfortable in that situation. Now, that shouldn't have made him an introvert because he was uncomfortable speaking to these guys. But I just the way he responded, and even after hours of deliberation, he was positive, but I don't know. Was it shyness or introversion? I don't know.
Or was it just the uncomfortableness of being, you're on the world stage, being criticized about something? So was it that?
Yeah. And because I heard Les Brown also said that he's an introvert, and Les Brown's an international stage speaker, conference speaker, always smiling, always laughing, always on stage, always doing what does his thing. And he says he's an introvert. So he's not been energized by being in the room full of a crowded room. And I found that, when I first heard it, I thought, no, Les, you got it wrong, Les. You got it wrong because the way I've heard some of your speeches, I am sure that you're energized by being on stage. Because it
can be energizing being on stage as an introvert, because when you're on the stage, you're not actually, whilst you're interacting with the people, it's not as if, say, you're at a networking event where you've got all people around you and there's a lot of buzz and things like that going on. When you're on stage, it's just you speaking to your audience, and then you're speaking on a topic that you're passionate about. That's even better because you know your topic inside out and you're passionate about it. And then that passion is attractive. So when someone is passionate about what they do, that is attractive. People are attracted to passionate people.
Wow. Wow. I think we've just dropped into this question here. We've just answered it. Can you be a rock star performing on stage and be an introvert or be shy? You can.
Yeah.
Well, you just said yes. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible to be all.
Oprah's introverted.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, oh, they didn't want to thought Oprah's introverted. But you know, if you look at Oprah, she's, you know, performing on a stage, but you don't really see a lot of her private life.
Yeah.
On in the media.
I always thought Oprah manages everything. Everything around her is managed and stage managed. So her conversations are managed, her production, everything that we see about her is well produced in that sense. There is no, I never thought that there is any off the cuff moment with her.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's right. Yeah.
Like I said, we've not seen the private life. Wow. Hey, Carol, it's been an amazing time talking to you. The time has just disappeared, Carol. You know what we said? Time has just disappeared talking to you about the misconceptions of introversion. And we're coming to that close. Wow, look, we're coming to that close now. And we're saying, when I normally close, I asked my guests to what would be the one word, one sentence. But I have to tell you it's a sentence because sometimes my guests tend to go into a whole chapter and verse. And then, so what would be the one thing that you tell everyone about introversion or extroversion? What is it that we can do to help ourselves?
I would say develop your self-awareness. And I have a quote that goes, before you can lead others, you have to be able to lead yourself. And self-awareness is key.
Repeat that one, Carol. Repeat that one. Repeat it louder. Repeat it.
Before you can lead others, you need to be able to lead yourself. And self-awareness is key.
Guys, self-awareness is key. Before you lead others, you've got to lead yourself. And sometimes that's even more difficult than trying to lead other people.
Yeah,
because
so self-leadership is key.
But our head is full of stereotypes of the way things should be and the way things are. And we respond to those stereotypes in life, not realizing that some of them are wrong. Some of them are really incorrect. And so we may think that we're self-aware, that we're developing ourselves, and we're really not self-aware. We're just responding to stereotypes all the time. How do we pull ourselves away from some of these stereotypes that we've lived with for such a long time?
We just need to take a step back, reflect.
Be an introvert.
And maybe that's what needs to happen. That more people who are extroverted need to spend more time self-reflecting.
Wow, we have a friend here again. Tony has come and said, thank you so much, Carol. He said, thank you so much for today's show. Carol, I want to thank you again for being on the show today. It's an amazing revelation. And your book, you talked about your book earlier.
Yes.
Where is that available?
It's available on my website, aboundingsolutions.com. This is a copy of it. aboundingsolutions.com, or it's on Amazon. It's on all the major online bookstores as well.
So I do know that you're an introvert, because had you been an extrovert, you'd have had that book in your hand from a long time, put it up at the camera. You wouldn't have even asked me permission to push it in right there. But as an introvert, you don't do that. It's amazing. Wow. I think some of these conversations, we need to have them a lot more especially in the school arenas as well.
Yeah.
And from what you were saying earlier, for what the school that you did some work with, and especially what's happening in our schools today with young people, with the issues that they're going through, this distinction needs to be made. And so people understand that there's not something wrong with them. Something's not wrong with you because you're not an extrovert.
Yeah. That's right. So, and I do think there is an education piece for children, for teachers, for parents and carers as well.
Whew. I am excited about this. I am excited about what you're talking about. And let me just pull up some more information. For further information, you can contact Carol, the coach for high achieving introverted women, executive and career coach, speaker trainer, www.aboundingsolutions.com. Continue this conversation. It doesn't have to end here, guys. Make contact with Carol and have this conversation. And I was going to say this earlier when you said people contacted you. It's probably easier for the introverts to contact you because you're an introvert yourself. And you probably spend time listening. If you were an extrovert and an introvert contacted you, the difficulty then would be holding yourself back to listen to enough of what they had to say. and putting some systems in place to make you listen. Because an extrovert would not necessarily listen. So I have learned something from the show today, and I'm going to go away now, and I'm not going to speak as much as I speak. I'm going to pause. I'm going to count to 1 to 10 before I respond. Yes, 1 to 10 before I respond. Hang on to the desk or something, or hold the chair and hold myself back and say, right, what is this person saying to me today? And then respond. Now, does that help?
Yes, that's yes. And just understand that people have a different preference for how they are, for being, for listening, for reflecting. So when you're amongst people, if you notice that there are certain people who are maybe speaking more than others, particularly if you're chairing a meeting or facilitating a meeting or a group, then make sure that you allow those who are not necessarily contributing to be able to contribute in the way that works best for them.
Wow.
So it might be that you sort of, rather than putting people on the spot, let people know what you're going to be asking, but maybe go around the group, and then when people have said, and then say, if anybody has anything further to add, then, you'll make time at the end, or go to those people and say, if you've got anything further that you want to add, I'll come back to you after this topic or whatever.
Yeah. That does help.
Yeah.
Allow equal time to everybody, so everybody gets to respond. And don't just go with the one who's speaking the loudest all the time.
That's right.
So I'm concluding
If
today.
you do that, my job is done.
So I'm concluding. You're an introvert, but you're an extrovert within an introvert.
No,
I think so.
I am not.
You've got extroversion qualities then within an introvert.
I'm probably on the scale sort of introversion extroversion. I'm probably I can veer towards the extrovert in terms of a lot of it is because I understand what introversion is. I understand myself, and I understand what I need to be able to get on and get ahead, and how to be my best self in different environments.
Wow. Be your best self in different environments. And that's the word we're going to close on. Be your best self in different environments. Wow. Man, I just had to probe you then for you to come out with that nugget. I'm going to quote you on that one. Be your best self in different environments. Guys, thank you for listening today. But before we go, let me just go through to the sponsor.
You are listening to the Message Talk Show and Podcast. Do you believe you have something to share? Do you believe you have something to contribute? Do you have a story to tell the world, to share with your community? Gandhi said, man often becomes what he believes himself to be. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. So join us on the Message Talk Show and Podcast with host Alex Gordon.
Miss the show. You got to be on the show.